It's so good to see all of you. It's so good to be together again with other people. That's fantastic. Everybody get their shots? Stand in line. A little public service announcement right there at the beginning. We got wonderful weather. This is fantastic. Almost everyone's in the shade right now, except our new intern, Sally. This is her first event. Sally, good to see you. Nice to meet you. Every once in a while, I come to an event and someone says, "Hi, Senator, I work for you now." I was like, "Oh, great. We're happy to have you." So look, I want to spend most of my time talking about whatever you want to talk about. I like taking as many questions as possible. That's why we do town halls. So I'm just going to give you a sense of what we've done so far in this campaign, right up to today, and then y'all will take it from there. I want to tell you first what is going to happen to you when you tell the world that you're running for U.S. Senate. As I imagine all of you will at some point. Two things happen immediately. One, all your friends from high school send you Facebook messages giving you a hard time. They think it's hilarious. Second, you're going to get a phone call from every political consultant in the country because they all want a job, right? And the way they apply for that job is by pitching you on what they think you need to do to win. And I got 1,000,000 of these pitches. And I can boil them all down for you because they all basically amount to the same thing. They said, "Jeff, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do some polling, we're going to do some focus groups, and then we're going to give you 5 key phrases that you can repeat on an endless loop for the next 18 months. And that's how you win." One of them told me, I got a great one that always works. He says, "Just tell people that the children are the future." I said, "Well, can I talk about early childhood education?" He said, "No, I wouldn't do that. Just tell people the children are the future and move on." And folks, a lot of candidates take that advice. Because what you get with that approach of 5 key phrases is you get control. And candidates want control. Running statewide in a big competitive state like North Carolina, it's a scary thing. And what they're pitching you is you can have some control. But what you lose is authenticity. What you lose is the ability to actually have a real conversation with people. So we're not going to do that. We're going to do the opposite of that. I think you all have come to see less and less every cycle. Your expectations keep falling. Less energy, less transparency, a lot less substance. We want a campaign that raises your expectations. So there are 2 ways we're trying to raise your expectations right now as we speak. One, by doing this, by doing town halls. I know this doesn't seem that novel or rare to most of you in the context of a U.S. Senate race. In a major state like ours, this is incredibly rare. This simple thing that we're doing right now is almost extinct and has been the entire century. But we're going to bring it back. I think you should... For infrastructure is the key. Oh, this is great. It's being outside. This is wonderful. I think town halls are the gold standard in American politics. And they give you accessibility to the candidate, and they make that candidate be transparent for all of you. And I think that's really important. So we're going to do 100 in 100 days, 100 town halls in 100 days. Never been done before. Part of the reason we're doing that is so that if some other candidate in the future wants to do 0, you'll notice and you'll care. You should expect more from candidates than that. Even people we like in office go their entire careers without ever talking politics in public, without meeting the public in public. And I think you shouldn't settle for that. That's the first thing that we're doing to raise your expectations. Second, 100 counties. All 100 counties. Can you win statewide in either party by just focusing on a handful of key counties? Yeah, you can. But that's not the right way to do this. The right way to do it is to actually start with some humility, that you don't know what's going on in every single county. We want to treat this campaign not just as a gigantic marketing effort, but as preparation for the job. And the way you do it is by showing up and listening. And you learn a lot. We were in Yadkin County. Yadkin County had 1 hospital, and 5 years ago, it closed. So now they're a county without a hospital. So we went to the site of that closed hospital, And we met with a doctor who would work there, and we heard about what it meant for families that no longer they have to drive 45 minutes for urgent care. We went to Transylvania County. How many people didn't know until just then that we have a Transylvania County? In eastern North Carolina, it's news to them quite often. And I tell them all the time, I say, it's not what you think, it's beautiful. You should totally go, land of waterfalls, right? 35,000 people in Transylvania County, pretty small county. They decided, about a decade ago, to make a concerted effort around early childhood education. Because they realized they had a small enough population that if they really worked at it, they could reach every kid who needs to be reached, every one. Transylvania County has world-class early childhood education. Nationally recognized. I think that's amazing. I wouldn't have known that unless we had gone. North Carolina has a strong legacy in this space. We were the first state in the country to have universal full-day kindergarten. There was a lieutenant governor you may have heard of in the 1970s named Jim Hunt who got that done. And we've sworn through. Then we had Smart Start, then we had pre-K. Folks, we would do very well to do better by our young children. And we're going to make preschool and early childhood a big part of this campaign. I think more people need to know what the average price of preschool is. Anybody want to guess what the average price is? It's right under $10,000 a year. I'll give you full credit because you were so close. Now, what is tuition, in-state tuition, at UNC Chapel Hill? Any guess?
50. 20,000.
I heard 8. 8's real close. It's 7. It costs more to put 2 kids through preschool than 2 kids through college. But we're asking young parents to do it before they've had any chance to save up. We know it's good for kids. Social development, emotional development, cognitive development is great for working families to help them make ends meet. You care about early childhood?
Sure do.
I bet you do. There was just something about your essence. You seem compassionate, forward-thinking. And folks, look, the young parents who can afford early childhood, they get it for their kids, almost all of them. And the parents who can't afford it wish like crazy that they could. And I bet I can go to the reddest counties in the state and tell them that your kids deserve the exact same opportunity. And I bet they agree. Out west, we hear about broadband just about everywhere. But out west, we hear about it a lot. There's a lot of individualism, that rugged individualism thing, that's real in Appalachia. It's a completely different culture out there. And a woman said to me, Jeff, we don't ask for much from y'all. She was talking about the state legislature. We don't ask for much from y'all, but what we do ask for, we really need. And being able to link up to the internet is something we really need. Before the pandemic, it was important, mainly for economic reasons. Have a job. As a small business, be able to sell what you make. But then you add the educational components of that, the digital divide at home, and now the telehealth component. We're all going to be getting a lot of our health care through the internet from here on out. It's a huge piece of the pie, and it's never going back to the way it was. We were in Moore County, and a dad told me that 3 years ago his son was diagnosed with leukemia. And the next month, his premiums went up 148%. And this was 3 years ago. He's been finding a way to scrape and get by and make those payments for 3 years. His son just finished his leukemia. He can't celebrate because he says, Jeff, I'm one bill away from bankruptcy. There are, depending on who's counting, between 36 and 38 developed nations on earth. There is one where a sick kid can bankrupt their parents. And it's ours. And it's totally unnecessary. We're the only one of those developed nations that has no form of universal insurance. And it's completely unnecessary, indefensible, and we should have it. And we can. We hear about this everywhere we go. We went to Buncombe and we heard about minimum wage. Buncombe's got a huge service sector. A third of our state earns less than $15 an hour. A third. Disproportionately women, disproportionately people of color. About time to give folks a raise. We can make a strong argument for that in any county in the state. Went to Burke County, and a young man asked me, why do we take a criminal approach with respect to cannabis? and a regulatory approach with respect to alcohol and tobacco? And I thought that was a good question. Y'all see what Virginia just did?
Yeah.
Virginia decided that they're going to create a regulated space and raise a bunch of tax revenue. What do you think North Carolina farmers think about that? Right? Nobody expects North Carolina to go first. But there's no reason for us to be last. 35,000 people a year get arrested for this in North Carolina. Disproportionately young people, disproportionately people of color. It's a criminal justice issue, it's an economic issue, it's an agriculture issue. We hear about it everywhere. Again, I can go to any county in the state and talk about it. Hear about climate just about everywhere we go. You know what's interesting we've learned? You know who's great on climate? Is farmers in eastern North Carolina. You're not going to find any climate deniers. They've been hit by 2 500-year hurricanes in the last 2 years. They are on board with the fact that the climate is changing. What we're going to do is put out a North Carolina Climate Action Plan. I want it to be specific to our state because we have specific assets like solar, wind, maybe offshore wind, maybe hydro, maybe retrofitting some dams. And we've got some specific challenges, right? We've got a 320-mile long coastline. So we have to have a mitigation conversation. What I want to do is not rely on a set of generalities about what climate action looks like. I want to show people specifically. Here's what it would mean for our state, for our economy, for jobs in different parts of the state. Because it's a win-win if you can be specific and help people visualize what that change is actually going to look like. It's really not that scary. It's really encouraging. But you got to put a little legwork in. That's something you can expect to see from our campaign in a little bit. So I was in Haywood County, and I had just given that speech. And I'd gone through my list of things. This woman came up and said, "Jeff, that all sounds great. None of it's going to matter when the misinformation hits your campaign." She said, "What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about the amount of misinformation in the political environment?" Folks, that's the right question. And before I take your questions, I want to answer hers. Because I didn't have a great answer. But I've been working on it, and I got a better answer. You don't combat misinformation by waving around a fact check. You do it with a human touch. You do it by showing people who you are as a person. And you have to do that before the misinformation hits, long before the misinformation hits. Hence, we're all here. We're trying to personalize this race and localize this race so that when they start saying crazy things about us, a bunch of folks here will say, no, I got a sense of who that guy is, and that doesn't sound quite right. And that's the best way. That is best case scenario for handling misinformation. So I'm applying for a job, and all of you get to decide whether or not to hire me. But I want you to know this isn't the first job I've ever had. I didn't come in a box that says political candidate on it. I was raised not too far from here. My first job was delivering flyers for a local pizza company and fending off dogs. I still remember a couple of those close encounters. I wanted to raise money for a car, but I couldn't get enough money, so I couldn't get the car. But luckily, my dad crashed his car, but didn't quite total it, so that became my car. The doors on the right-hand side were completely smashed in. So when I parked it at high school, I had to park with the left-hand side facing the school, because otherwise it was really embarrassing. And with that car, I got my first real job, which was Blockbuster Video. Anybody here never been to a Blockbuster Video? Looking at you. Looking at you. No, it's called Netflix now, right? I had a blue shirt and a yellow collar. I thought that job was great. And then I worked at a barbecue restaurant. And then I enlisted and went to Afghanistan, and then I came back, and on the GI Bill, I went to law school, and I became a prosecutor in Gaston County. And I was doing that. And I was closing up court one day, and this defense attorney said, "Hey, Jeff, did you hear the news?" I said, "No, what happened?" He said, "The mayor of Charlotte was just arrested by the FBI. Remember that?
Yes.
And I said, "That's amazing." And then I just went on about my day. I didn't think it was going to impact me in any way, the same way you wouldn't think it was going to impact you, right? Mayor stepped down the next day. They picked my state senator to be the new mayor. And clear out of the blue, I got picked to replace him. I was 31. I'd never run for office. I didn't know anyone who would ever run for office. But they said, "Jeff, you're the guy, go to Raleigh." And I had to quit that job, because you're not allowed to be a prosecutor and elected official at the same time. And I went to Raleigh. That was 6 years ago. 7 years ago, spring of 2014. My wife and I had 1 kid at that time, Hayden, and now we have 3. And I've got 3 jobs, so it works out to be roughly 1 job per kid. My wife works full-time, and because of the way we're running this campaign, I only get to be home about 1 night a week. Last night was my night, and I'll see them on Sunday night. And our 2-year-old is Avery. She's our girl. And because of what we're doing with this 100 county approach, I'm now watching her grow up in time lapse. And that's hard. It's amazing, just in 7 days. Her face looks different. Her vocabulary is bigger. It's remarkable. And that's the hardest part of doing this, is the amount of time we're spending away. Folks, the only way I can justify that to her and to myself is if I run this campaign for the right reasons and in the right way. Not with 5 key phrases, but with something real, with something transparent, with something substantive. I think I can run a campaign that's going to make you proud to be from North Carolina, and that'll make Avery proud of her dad. And that's why I'm running. And I feel really good about how we've started. I know we've come out of a really dark political period. I think we can turn the page here in North Carolina. And folks, we're tearing down the track. We really are. And now, we're going to talk about anything that y'all want to talk about. I'm so glad that you're all here. Young parents get to go first, because maybe there's a babysitter at home or something. You got to respect the babysitter on the clock. If there aren't any young parents, then we'll open it up to anyone else who has a question. Happy to talk about anything you want to talk about.